It's a different story in Europe. The EU overnight announcing that they're going to be welcoming travel from vaccinated tourists. And I guess that's the key word, isn't it? It's going to be all about the vaccine. If you want to start travelling internationally, you would have had to have had the jab.
Look, indeed, and go back about 4 or 5 months ago, and Alan Joyce copped a lot of flack from saying that if you want to fly Qantas overseas, you're going to have a jab, and there was a lot of pushback on that. But the reality is, governments are going to dictate, as we have seen with Europe, saying you're very welcome to come here. We'd love you to come here, but you have to be vaccinated. And countries like Singapore, I expect, will be saying something very similar. If you want to transit Singapore en route to somewhere else or come here, you're going to have a jab. And go back to the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. When you travelled overseas, you had a passport in one hand and a vaccine book, a vaccination book in the other, and you had 4 or 5 or 6 jabs, depending on where you were going, for all sorts of exotic diseases you simply did not want to get, and you couldn't travel without it. And that's what we're facing today, is you're going to have a vaccination, or you're simply not going to be able to travel overseas at all. And that would be, I would imagine, the situation right across the globe, because as we've seen with India, this thing, it gets completely out of control, and terrible, terrible scenes and devastation. And no country wants to be in that situation. So people coming into those to different countries are simply going to have to be vaccinated, and that's it.
There are a few options, of course, for us at the moment to travel. We've got the travel bubble with New Zealand. Other countries seem to be doing their own similar sort of bubble setups. How are they working around the world? How do you see that bubble concept developing?
Oh, I think that is certainly going to be the future. Vaccinate, even with people being vaccinated, you're going to have a bubble, or you're going to have a corridor, say like between Singapore and Hong Kong, or say Singapore and Australia, here Australia and South Korea, for instance. As countries well and truly get on top, and when they harmonise their policies and procedures with ours, then yes, we'll open up a travel bubble if and when we can. And I see that situation being the norm, I would say, for at least another 12, possibly 24 months, particularly with the experience out of India that we've seen. It's going to be quite some time before things become normal.
Geoff, just finally, we reported in this bulletin this $3.1 billion loss for Virgin Australia. Perhaps not that surprising, I guess, when you see that the statistic there that the airline was forced to reduce flying levels down to just 4.2% of previous years. I mean, we know it's bad, but when you look at 4% of previous flying, I mean, it just really is the stark reality, isn't it, that a lot of airlines have been facing?
Look, indeed, it was a devastating blow for Virgin, a crippling blow for Virgin, and of course Qantas the same thing as well. But obviously they were far better healed. But that figure is a snapshot of a moment in time, and it represented the fact that the airline was in administration. And once you go into administration, there's all sorts of additional costs, and everything has to be brought to account. And we should emphasise that Virgin came out of administration. Bain Capital paid $3.5 billion for it. Now it has a very, very solid balance sheet backed by Bain Capital, and it's a very different operation to the one that went into administration. But yes, it is a sobering snapshot of how bad things got last year for Virgin in particular, but the airline industry in general.
Geoff Thomas, always appreciate your analysis. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.